Hi, welcome to Foppy Loving Life. In case you've forgotten, I did an interview with Vanessa from Australia as a catch-up, and hopefully you watched part one. If not, I will try and remember to put the link in the description, but this next bit is part two. And we've got lots more things to say and to share with you. So enjoy.
You're almost better coming if you don't have a lot of assets, but then you won't meet the new income requirements. So it depends on the value of your currency, whereas the New Zealand currency and the Australian currency are always weak to the euro and the pound. The American dollar, not so much. I don't know about the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar's dropped a bit. It's a bit more vulnerable. So I would say if you need to earn a living, if you're coming on a placement with a company, which is rare, come. But your assets in Australia are going to get hammered. And there's other tax disadvantages in Australia when you're a foreign tax resident. If you're going to come as a retiree, I'd say come for a year, come for 2 years. But you would have to really, I had to have a lot of money, so it doesn't matter.
This is what I'm thinking. Yeah,
because some people do. For some people, another 5,000, 6,000 or 7,000 a year in additional tax. They'd be like, oh well, okay, I'll just pay it because I want the lifestyle. I want beautiful France. I want to live in Europe. I want. I can't create that. I think coming for 6 months of the year, we have Australian friends who have a house up in Burgundy, which they've had for 15 years, and they ran it as a gîte, and it ran its own little income for a long time to help pay for itself, and they've just retired, and they always come and stay. They've just been to stay, and we have a catch up every year. And, they come for 3 to 6 months a year. So they stay Australian tax residents, they have a house here, they come to France every year, they have their stay, they do the brocante, they drink the wine, they go to dinner, and they go back to Australia. And I think, realistically, it is the best model. And we're not the only Australians that I know that have come at our age, that have bought into accommodation, they're not doing anything wrong, possibly came forever, and are now financially going, you know what, this is not going to make sense for us. There's no point going broke staying here.
No. You've got to leave at the right time, haven't you?
And they're leaving, and it'll take a long time for them to sell their place. And they're going. And I have another friend who's been here, had a second home here for 25 years. She's had a couple, actually. She's renovated and done different things. And suddenly they're just at that point in their early, mid-70s where health is just starting to get to that point. The trips are very long. It's just getting to that point. And I don't know if they ever thought they would sell their French home, but they probably will sell their French home this year.
Well, this is why I think a lot of people, you can't say you would never go back. I mean, Duncan and I do, but I think Duncan's more of a, no, I'm never going back. Whereas being a little bit older, I think you never know what's around the corner, do you? So anyway, I don't intend on going back if I can help it, but, sometimes circumstances... As you didn't expect it, so... No,
we didn't expect it, but I'm incredibly sort of pragmatic. I'd never hang my hat on a hook and say, that's my dream, I'm not budging. No, I'm not a never say never. I guess I have an aspect of an adventure, and I have a whole lot of things, but you start to see the ducks lining up and you go, oh, those ducks are not... Whereas the way the ducks lined up 9 years ago was looking very, very, very different. But maybe the French government's responding to the number of people that are moving to France. I was listening to a podcast, this is the number one destination for foreigners wanting to leave their countries and move to Europe, is France.
By all accounts, a lot of Americans are starting to head over as well.
Look, a lot of Americans...
You can't blame them, come here.
A lot of the Americans are looking at Italy, but Italy has some other... The cost of medical and health is still way cheaper than America, but it's very different to what it is here. It's not as affordable as it is here. A lot of Americans want to go to Italy. And it's interesting, I was listening to political podcast actually talking about, there's just this number of people who want to get out of America and people who want to move and where do they want to go. And he's in the EU part of Ireland, and he'd just been in France because they're tying in, looking at the new trade relationships, all of the new things that are economically affecting us globally, and he was talking about all those. And he said, the French love to complain, he said, and yet this is where everyone wants to come.
I know.
All the foreigners, they
can't understand why we've came. They're always saying that.
Yeah, they're looking at the medical, they're looking at the standard of living, the food, the relaxed lifestyle, the ambience, a whole range of things. I think for me, culturally, this has been one of the most, other than when I was at university, this is the most stimulating period of my life, intellectually, and stimulating conversation and ideas and thoughts. Not talking about sport all the time. Matthew's just been back in Australia for his son's wedding, and one of the things he said, everyone want to talk to him about sport. Oh, what team do you follow? What sport? What's this? They were even gambling on their, on their Ladro app or whatever. What's it called? That Ladbrokes or
Ladbrokes, yeah.
Yeah, apps. Gambling at the wedding, betting on the footy.
And
Matt came back and went. Now, we both follow the rugby union. We love rugby union. Rugby World Cup's on. Matt played rugby. My son's played rugby. We enjoy it, whatever. But we don't live and breathe sport.
Yeah. They do like a gamble here. You go to the bars, they're often doing the horses and stuff like that. But
I don't think we've ever sat down here with the myriad of people that have come through our doors and sat there and talked about football. Ever.
No, it's funny, isn't it?
Ever. The conversations are diverse and interesting because we're all diverse and interesting. We've all come from somewhere else. Why are you here? Why have we all found ourselves in the same place at the same time? What's been your journey? Yeah. Very, very interesting.
I must admit, that's one thing with being a gîte owner or like yourself, B&B, it's the meeting people from around the world and it's really interesting. One thing I will say is we've decided we're not letting our gîte anymore, but that'll be another video.
Okay, that's a big step.
Yeah, but then thankfully we're not reliant on that money.
You're not reliant on, and I think that's
Duncan works.
Getting back to what you were saying, Janet, about my advice would be if you're thinking I'm going to pack the kids up and go to France for a year or whatever it is, my advice would be don't. Come for a year and take the kids out of school and travel and get a camper van or something. Yes,
for all the experience. Yeah.
But don't come here and try and replicate a mini French life or whatever. I'd say just forget about your kids' education. Come, travel, see the world. They'll learn more in a year.
You can come across so much red tape and the bureaucracy here.
The classroom structure is very difficult. Not all children, particularly children from our cultures, they do not adapt to the school.
No, I think if they come here very young, they might be okay because they're in straight. Yes. But if you're used to a certain system and then you come here, that's...
Well, if one of your parents is French, yes, of course. If you're married to a Frenchman or a French woman or whatever, so that's all very, very, very different. I don't think this is the place to come to make money if you're a small business owner. I mean, we never expected to make a profit. We always just expected to earn enough to live and to be here. And that's what we've achieved. We haven't achieved above that. And we can do that, so that's okay.
It never feels like the sort of country that are interested in money.
No,
because
very true.
The people aren't very materialistic.
No,
they shut the shops willy-nilly, and they don't seem to be worried about the money they're losing while it's shut.
Well, no, because they don't want to. They can't. The complexities of hiring staff here is.
Well, and sometimes
it's a nightmare.
Yeah, and sometimes it's down to licences. They can't have someone else run like the bar. They can't have someone else run their bar because it's all to do with the financial side of it. Only that person who normally runs that bar, that's the only person that can do it. So if they go on holiday, like we've got the same with the bar in our village. If they go on holiday, it's just shut for 2 weeks. Well,
and that's what Jose...
You'd never find that in the UK. They'd find someone else to run it.
Yeah, and the boulangeries and so many of our guests say, why'd they open on the weekends? And I'm going, because they're entitled to 2 days off a week and they don't want to work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And they're going,
why don't they do dinners?
Why are they just doing lunch?
Yeah.
Well, they've already done a 12-hour day by the time they close. Well, maybe they've done a 10-hour day by the time they've got the kitchen ready, prepped, made 50 lunches, done the washing up, done the prep for the next day, done the books, done the whatever. Do you really think they want to open for dinner?
We do find ourselves saying that quite a lot. They're missing out on a trick here, but that's because we're thinking like they would in the UK.
And
thought they could chance to earn money there. We could make some money there, but they don't.
They don't want to go over there 80,000 a year.
No.
There's plenty of artisans in like Duncan, and once you'll ring them in, March, and you'll say, oh, we need something done. Oh no, sorry, in financial years in December. So you're ringing someone after summer in September, and you're saying, well, could you come in November? And they're going, oh no, I won't be working because I'll have hit my level and I won't be back on the. They don't want to go into the next bracket, and then it's going to cost them a whole different game. So there is a lot of stuff about business that's counterintuitive. For us, we haven't expanded our business because if we hire someone, casually doesn't really work because they can then become a permanent employee and they can claim that they've worked for you for more than 3 months. There's complexities about labour laws. And then if we need to terminate someone because we are closed over winter or we don't need them anymore or whatever it is, we are then responsible for their unemployment benefit. The government doesn't pay their unemployment benefit. We do. And so for us, hiring anyone was such a big financial liability.
You have to cover them with medical as well, don't you?
Yeah. We restructured and remodeled and scaled back our business so that Matthew and I could run it. Whereas we could really do with an extra pair of hands every now and again, but that's not how things work. So I think if you really, really need to work, France isn't the country to come to unless you're coming on a government-sponsored job for 5 years, you're coming on and then you will do that job, and when that job's over, you will leave. Or if you manage to get yourself something with a company and get coming in, and no French person has taken up the job because it's got to be advertised there first for 3 months. It's just all jobs have got to go to a French national, be offered to French nationals first. Once your employment has finished, or if your employment finishes with that company, you don't have a right to remain here. You don't have a valid visa. You have to leave the country and reapply if you want to come back. If we wanted to retire here, we would still have to sell. We wouldn't have to sell. We still have to pack up, go back to Australia and reapply to come back in on a new visa because we can't reapply for that visa from here. So it's been wonderful. But I think if you want to come, you should come, but you need to be mindful. You need to ask critical questions. You need to seriously look at where your financing is coming from, what your assets are worth. Does your country provide, have additional tax implications? So in Australia it does. So in Australia, the first 20,000, I suppose the average income is about 75,000 Australian dollars a year, just to give you it's about 30,000 pounds, I guess. That's a sort of a benchmark of what an average medium to low wage might be. In Australia, the first $20,000 that you earn a year is tax-free. Right. So your tax, your 30% tax bracket doesn't kick in till after you've earned 20,000. So then if you're earning $70,000 a year, you're only being taxed on 50,000, not on 70. When you become a foreign tax resident of Australia, i.e. you're Australian but you're paying tax in a foreign country, which we are, you lose your tax-free threshold. So we've got an additional penalty where I pay tax from the first dollar that I earn. We pay tax and cottestations from the first dollar we earn here. If we only earn 3,000, we've still got to pay all those 1,000 would go in cottestations and contributions. And so there's no minimum tax bracket here either. So there's lots of things that we have that they're in the UK and in Australia that are associated with small business that I think would be a big boost to France if they could be adopted.
Yeah, I know. But
they would free things up a little bit more. They would give a little bit more leverage and flexibility to business owners here, a range of different things. If you come and you want to open a business so that you can live and have the experience of living here for a while, absolutely. But just be mindful that that's all it's ever going to be. Yeah. And it's not a pathway to anything else anymore.
No, and I mean, we've always said that people do just turn up and haven't done the research. That's the thing. And And it's just got more complicated now.
It has got more
financially more complicated than ever that I know of.
And that's why Janet and I have decided to talk about this today, not to be negative, but there are far more questions to be asked than what most people would ever think. And all the information is there on the French consulate website of your country, wherever you are in the world. You type in, French consulate Australia or UK or New Zealand or Canada, wherever you are, and all that information that's applicable to you and to your nation is there. And then you need to go on to your tax office, also the ATO, the Australian Tax Office, and type in foreign tax resident. If I leave, what is the implications? And Australia's the toughest in the world. We now have, if we're externally here, we have the most expensive passport in the world. So I've got to renew my.
Oh, really?
I've got to renew my passport. It's over. It's over £300 for me to renew my passport.
Wow.
We have the most expensive passport in the world. We have tax penalties if we live overseas, which is this foreign tax resident. So we lose our threshold. We are cut off from voting. And a number of people get cut off from Medicare. And now, for some reason, we haven't been cut off from Medicare, which is our Australian. It's like our NHS. And for some reason, we haven't been. But I think it's because we went back after 4 years, and I went to the doctor and we did things, and so my card's been activated in some way.
Yeah, I think that happened with us going back to the UK in a way. Yeah.
And so it used to be just a flat cut off after 4 years and you had no access. So if you went back as an Australian passport holder to Australia, you had no access. You needed travel insurance. Now that actually hasn't played out for us. And it's only after endless discussions on Australians in France that we've realised the nuances that are more complicated than it's brutal. But there are implications for everybody living overseas. And I think for many, many people, it's a lifeline to something that feels like they've got some breathing space and they can relax and they can enjoy it. And don't buy a chateau or a mansion.
No, I think you've just got to consider everything, and if you can still afford it after all that, then we'd say yes.
So if you're a moderately well-funded retiree, you can probably afford it. If you are not a well-funded retiree, you probably won't meet the income
you're
levels.
Hit some walls, really.
And that's, people just go, I want to move to France, I'll get a visa, I'll come, whatever. And they don't realise, it is, yes, you can do that. And France France had the best pathways in the world for us to come and live in Europe. They really did. It wasn't the only reason why we chose it, but there was something there on the table with this entrepreneur's visa that allowed us to create something and come in a way that was more complicated anywhere else. And so
and yet it seemed really complicated for you when you got here, to me, but then to you maybe it being in the situation probably not so much.
The comparison for us at the time we came before Brexit, when anyone from the UK could pretty much just get in their car and drive across, buy a house and move in. Exactly. It was completely fluid. It was completely fluid. And many Australians have British passports and passports by descent. They come in, they would move here on British passports. So they might be born in Australia, but they're dual passport holders. And
well, it's like some people now, if they've got an Irish
that's it.
passport,
We've got friends here on an Irish passport. Italian heritage, Greek. I mean, there was a lot of mobility after the Second World War. A lot of people have got grandparents that were born in Europe, and they're coming into they were coming into the EU. But we didn't have that, and we talked about it. So we had to have a unique business idea. We lodged an extensive 100-page business plan in French, which was the business proposal, the business outline, the global market for the business, 1, 5, 10-year plan. We had an environmental policy, brand policy, direct market within Mayenne, etc., 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 etc. That was quite... But Matt's used to doing business planning. I've worked on that in business before, so that was something that we could turn our head to. We actually used a New South Wales Australian government plan for writing your business plan for applications to open a shop or something. We actually used that as our draft and built on that. We had to have our flights booked. We had to have our business premises and our residential premises secured, either leased or purchased. We had to come to France to get an Interpol check. We had to pick up papers from the gendarmerie here in Mayenne and have them stamped and certified for an Interpol check. A year's income in the bank. And as you know, you can't open a bank account here if you don't have an address or a residential address. So that was a little bit of a tension. But the mayor assisted with that because he knew we'd put in an offer that had been accepted, we were going to buy. So it took 6 hours to get our bank accounts opened. We had to put, 30,000 euros in the bank, year's health insurance, pre-purchased, and then we applied. That was
bizarre, yeah.
And then we sort of went.
yeah.
And at some point, because it's just silence, you don't hear anything. Eventually, on one of the move to France, whatever, there was someone was providing some pro bono advice, an immigration lawyer in Paris, and so he was commenting on one of the Facebook groups or whatever, and so I contacted him and I had a phone call with him, and he said, right, how much money have you put in? How long ago was your application? What's your business? What's whatever? And he just said, no, you're through. He said, it's fine. He said, they can't reject you. He said, if they haven't rejected you in 6 weeks, it must be approved. It's automatically approved.
Oh, right.
And he said, if you've put that much money in, he said, if you've put, it actually wasn't a lot, Janet. It was like, if you've invested 50,000 into France, they'll automatically approve it. Now, we'd obviously had spent a lot more than 50,000 euros. And so then we just got on the ball to try and find out where our file was sitting on someone's desk who'd gone on holidays. It was sitting in an out tray. And it all came through. But at least France had that pathway.
Yeah, I do think if you've got a set pension and you've got a regular amount of money coming in all the time, they're going to say, yes, you can come, because they know you've got the money that's there. But if you turn up here without any money, then no, you're not going to.
But an average, a lot of people who are on average pensions, it is not enough money to meet the income requirements.
It isn't really,
anymore.
no.
So, do come. It's the most beautiful country. And, the freshness of the food, the people, I think, you're only ever an hour away from somewhere amazing. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think a lot of people find it incredibly refreshing coming to live in Europe. I think there's a philosophy about life, and as you said, not this obsession with money, but an obsession with family and people and history and life. They want to talk about literature, politics.
We're only across a little bit of water, and the differences between the UK and here is just vast. It just is different.
It's the same, and I think a lot of people thrive. Going and becoming the étranger is a very unique experience too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, there's always been political tension about immigration and immigrants and the people who speak another language. This has been going all our lives. When I was a kid, it was the Italians, and then it was the Lebanese, and then it was the Greeks, and then it was the Vietnamese who were all running crime gangs out of Sydney, and of course they weren't, and then it was the next thing and the next thing. And it's just like an evolving thing. And of course, all anyone ever has to do if they immigrate to Australia is bring a great regional cuisine, and everyone goes, oh, have you eaten the Lebanese food? Have you had the Vietnamese food? Have you had the Greek food? Have you had this in Australians? Once you're in, put that food on the table, and everything disappears.
Yeah, they definitely do love their food, and they do like to try different foods. I mean, our neighbours the same.
There are much more complex questions to be asked, and there is legislation that's pending. I don't think it'll go through. I don't think it's in France's interest for it to go through. And France 20.
What was that?
The legislation that's pending about the language tests and the 20% and the global wealth asset tax. I watched a documentary on France 24 about the new French language test. And this is for citizenship. So they've cranked it up for citizenship. So it's all under review. It hasn't all gone through, but it's all under review. So France 24, which is English television.
It's quite a good
news
channel,
program.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can watch it on YouTube. Watch Janet. Watch France 24.
Yeah.
There we go. You get your thing. They had they got 10 French National University graduates to come in and do the oral and the written test, which is now up for nationality. 2 failed. 5 only just passed the written test. And when they were asked about it, they just said the complexity of the nuances of a grammar in the questions was so complicated that at times even they weren't quite sure what the answer was. Now, this is people who have got university degrees, and French education is quite serious, isn't it? It's a reasonable standard at a university level.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, what are they making it more difficult on purpose, do you think?
Yes. And
I'm glad. Well, hopefully I'll never have to
They
do
said
it.
they had a lady. They interviewed a woman who's on her pathway to citizenship. She's come in from another country, and they reckoned that she would need how many 100 hours it was of formal classes to get. She works in French. She speaks fluent French, colloquial French. She lives and works in spoken and written French. But it's not at a grammatical level to pass this test. And they reckon the amount of classroom time that would take to get a non-French speaker up to the level, they said it was almost impossible. And the funding for the French language classes that some immigrants and refugees get, we didn't because we came on entrepreneurs visa, but our Australian friends who came across on their British visa, they got free language classes. We didn't. They're all being cut back, so all the funding. And so they're saying this is problematic because it's too difficult. It's too hard, it's too difficult, and it's asking a level of French that you don't need to live and work and speak fluently in French.
No, this is true, yeah.
So the French were flagging this themselves and saying, this is wrong. Are you deliberately setting up people to fail? And there's not the resources there for people to learn to problem solve your way through to pass that test. And if you're not academic with grammar, like me, because of my dyslexia, it just becomes a whole nother level.
So if that is the case, though, that if they're doing it and setting everybody to fail, then surely that's a lot of time and money wasted, and not why bother to do it in the first place.
Well, that was what the journalists were saying. That was the news story. They're just saying this is, someone needs to take a more sensible. This was for the nationality, though. This is not for the entrepreneur visa or whatever that we would. Ours is middle high school level, I think, fluency and written.
I think verbal is one thing, but to be writing it's a whole new ball game.
Well, we don't do this anyway anymore. If I'm writing, I'm typing on my phone or on my iPad. Everything's typed now too.
And you can be corrected and everything, can't you? Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, it could pick up that you've spelt something wrong.
Talking about this, there was one thing I heard recently that's also possibly coming in is anybody over 65 may have to redo like what we would call the highway code in UK for driving.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, it's 65 plus could be having to sit that just to see if they still remember it. And I thought, I'm going to come out unstuck because I wasn't very good with the highway code in the UK.
So it's... I just think you need to approach this as not... It comes from an idea and from a dream for most people, and it comes as a quality of life decision for most people. But there are a component who seem to think that a move to a foreign country will solve a whole lot of problems. Now it might, but then again, it's going to present you with a whole lot of new ones. Yeah,
I think people, like even with us, they think we're here on holiday all the time, whereas they're not. We're just obviously still trying to make money to live.
You're still trying to.
So yeah, but well, I mean, you've been here long enough to say, well, it was a good experience while we were there, and you're not going back with bitterness or anything really.
It's been life-changing.
Yeah.
In all the ways. I was talking to Cheryl from Cider Barn. We came at the same time, and she came across from the UK with her husband Nick, and they established a business, and we met at a English-speaking women in business. I hosted an event here the first year I was here, and I met.
That's right. I came to that. Yeah.
And I met Cheryl.
Yeah.
Yes, you did. And she was just reminiscing because she's just had her finished her 7th year as we have started our 8th year. And she was reminiscing, and I messaged her today, and I said to her, I don't think we're the same people we were when we came, and in a really good way. France has changed us.
Yeah. No, it's true. You just get on with it, don't you? But I suppose if I looked back at myself then, but...
And they're all...
different country, I know I've gained a lot of things. Like, I mean, the language, I never thought I'd be speaking French, and that just as an example, Yeah.
Or running your own YouTube channel.
No, exactly. And, we're running a gîte. There's lots of things. You just do it, and it just comes in slowly, but I looked back.
But we're not living the pace of life that we were.
No.
We're probably eating differently. Things are probably we run with the year more. I think as an Australian even more so, because in Sydney it's cool for 6 weeks of the year and then it's hot. That's it. It's not like there's 4 seasons.
Yeah, that's one thing. You're going back to all the heat.
Well, no, we're going back to. We have a house in a town which was one of the closest towns to where Matt's family farm was. And it's about 7 hours drive north of Sydney, but it's inland. It's not along the coast.
Right.
It's inland, and there's a mountain range, and it's much cooler. And the climate there is almost the same as here in Mayenne.
Right.
The winter temperatures are about the same, down below zeros, but it never gets... You rarely have a day over 26 or 27 in summer. So it's not like Sydney where it can sit on 34,
nice temperature.
34, right. 35, 36, and... So we're going back to a much cooler climate in a town even much smaller than Mayenne. Well, we don't know when we're going.
No.
We're not. There's no mad panic. We've still got a few things to do, and we're going to go through this year, and at some point it'll all tumble together. And getting the diagnostics done and there's stuff about selling that's. Very different.
Well, that's another video, really, to say they will be going on the market, and I'm going to be doing a house tour.
Yes.
So if any of you are out there with the money to buy...
and not as expensive as you think.
Exactly. You'd be surprised. So...
because Mayenne is still a very, very affordable. If this house was in Laval, which is half an hour away, it'd be double what you would pay... Here.
I was looking at some properties online yesterday actually, and there was one that I knew this particular house, had it been in the UK, would be like $1 million, and it was like 300 and something. It's still affordable, put it that way.
Ours will have a 6 in front of it, but it won't have a 1.2 million, which is what it would be in Angers or in Laval, or the Loteaux Particuliers in Laval sell up over $1 million.
Yeah, in town again in the UK, in London, like a big town like that, it would still be still much more.
And that's the fun, isn't it? In that there are still parts of France, not on the Riviera, and not in Bordeaux, and not in Paris, and not up in the ski resorts, but there are still, and the Mayenne is definitely still where people can come. And you can buy affordably. And I think that's probably why there were so many second homes here. The Brits had so many second homes in the Mayenne too.
Well, that's what ours was originally, yeah.
So you had
but maybe I'll do that as another video actually talking about... Because some people... Why is it so cheap there? And I did start to collate different information and stuff, so maybe I'll do that.
Yeah.
But we paid, at the time, I think it was like 28,000... I can't remember if that was euros or pound, but it's... obviously not a lot of difference, and that was 2 houses side by side. There's no way, obviously one of them was livable, the other just about, and the other one was a wreck, but even so.
And property is not viewed in the way as an asset here.
No,
Or by the
exactly.
banks or by the French government. Whereas I think in the UK and definitely in Australia, it's the primary asset. It's the great driver. You spud the money, you move up, and when you retire, that's your bulk. You've got your retirement, but it's that asset of
But it's just all the. I mean, you can buy here and do it up, and you can make some money, and people do still do that, but not to the level that you would do in the UK. You could. It's just people are just doing that all the time, aren't they? Buying, renovating, selling, and the houses get bigger and bigger each time because of the money they're making.
Well,
But
so
you
all the
just can't
housing
do that the
programs I
same way
watch.
here. Exactly. Well, I think
Watch do-
it's probably what initiated our first move. I can't even remember now. It seems so long ago. Well, it was 21 years ago now. So yeah, things have changed a lot in that time.
No,
As I said,
you might not get you're not definitely not going to get your equity growth. If you're buying in a low market, you're not going to get the equity growth that if you buy in a high or more expensive market. But we would never have even had a spec for this house as part of our brief of what we were looking for, because it never occurred to us.
oh, okay.
This house that we're sitting in here in Mayenne, it was double or triple the price anywhere else. So we weren't even looking for something. We were looking.
So did you ever? You had a lump sum of money and then you looked accordingly.
Yes.
So that's why you were so surprised. Can we really afford that sort of thing? Surprised.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think that's what people do. Still do that even now, even though the prices have crept up.
And it was
But,
at the bottom
you know.
of a 15-year slump. So you've always got, you're buying are you buying in a high market? You're buying in a falling market? Are you selling you buy and sell in the same market. But when you change countries, of course, it's very different. This had been in a 15-year slump. So that's a long time.
Right, okay,
All
the
right.
battery's going to go. So the next video, as I say, will be hopefully the tour of the house. And this might even be in 2 parts. I don't know. See how it looks when I edit. Anyway, au revoir.
Au revoir.